Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, and welcome to Dharma Explorers. Dharma Explorers is a series of conversations with prominent personalities who are strong supporters of dharmic principles but were not born in Hindu household. Today we are talking with Shri Tahir Gora ji. Now, Tahir Aslim Gora was born in Pakistan in a Punjabi Muslim family. He is the founder and CEO of Tag TV. He is a Canadian broadcaster, editor, publisher, and writer of fiction as well as nonfiction. His shows on YouTube have hit more than 100 million views worldwide. He has written 5 novels, 3 collections of short stories, and 2 collections of poems in Hindi and Urdu. He's also the founder and CEO of Canadian Thinkers Forum. Interestingly, he identifies himself as a Hindu born in Muslim faith and a Canadian Punjabi of Bharatiya heritage, born in the political entity called Pakistan. Tahirji, a warm welcome to Dharma Explorers.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm honored to joining you today.
Thank you. This must be a bit of a role reversal for you. Normally we find you behind the anchor's desk in your, television studio, interviewing, other panelists. Here you are today as a guest panelist. So thank you for that. Must be a bit of a strange hat to wear for you, but I'm sure you'll carry it well.
No, thank you. I actually wear this hat on and off. I do appear in many friends' podcast. Yeah. And no, absolutely. I would love to resume our talk on those interesting and relevant issues.
Okay, wonderful. So, let me start, with Tahir Gora as a person. As you would remember, you were my closing keynote speaker at the Threads 2019 conference in Boston. And I was recently reviewing what you said there, and I'm going to read one of the quotes. It's an interesting, but has a bit of touch of pathos, if I may say so. So let me read the quote. It says, in my country of birth, Pakistan, it is next to impossible to get an answer to the question, who am I? Can you explain this to our viewers, what you meant by that statement, and how did you finally find out who you were?
Actually, I was born in Lord Ram city, Lahore. I grew up in Lord Ram's other son's city, Kasur. And the gentleman who was a Sufi poet in Kasur, whom we call Baba Bulle Shah, his tomb was about say 200 meters from my house. So the first poem I read, written by him on those early days, in Punjabi, as you and I know Punjabi, and the Punjabi is a language of Gupta dynasty. Punjabi is a language of Hindu civilization. But Bulle Shah said, in Bulliya ki jana main kaun? Your question is, whom am I? Bulla said, Bulliya ki jana main kaun? And this poetry, in fact, whenever I read this poetry, it touches me, it haunts me, and also it hurts me about the identity crisis of most Muslims, not just in Pakistan, even in India, in Bangladesh, all across that region. We would touch this complex issue maybe as our talk continues. But the thing is, the same question struck me in my early childhood. Bulliya ki jana main kaun? So I pondered questions. Main kaun hu? Because I was surrounded by ruins of gurdwaras and mandars, in my city. And I was told that I'm a Muslim. Although later on in my, as life went on, I I actually got the answers of the definition of Islam and Muslim, whatever. We can talk later. But that was the kind of scenario I was caught in. What Bulla said, "Bulya ki jana mein kaun." So that was kind of a quest for my identity. So my identity, I thought that, Muslims and Islam, they're Arab people. On those early days of my life, there was only state television. And I used to see a couple of pictures of Arabs, in newspapers. So I thought they are Muslims. I'm son of this soil, you know. So I belong to the ruins of these beautiful mandars and beautiful gurdwaras. So that was kind of the feeling. And then I used to hear stories of my ancestors, my mother, my nani, my grandmother used to tell me about those stories, pre-partition stories, when there was no sort of, differentiate, in those times. My uncles, my father, they were young people before 1947, and they witnessed the world. So my grandparents, my parents, my uncles, my aunts, they all were the carrier of common civilization. So I inherited that civilization from my family because I was born in 1963. Pakistan was carved out of India through the amputation of India in 1947. So when I was growing, Pakistan was like maybe 20, 22 years old at the time. So my mother, my father, my uncles, they knew about our Hindu civilization. So, I mean, honestly, I never heard hateful stories about Hindu civilization from my mother, from my father, honestly. Yes, some of the people who migrated from UP, and some of them, settled in Lahore and Kasur, they were, kind of little revengeful towards India. And I thought, why are they? Because my parents were not. They were pure Punjabi. They had all those civilizational rituals and spiritual elements within them. So I inherited, and then I realized, no, of course I belong to this land. My language is Punjabi. Urdu came into my life later, but Punjabi was my language, and Bulleh Shah was my neighbor, and all those people. I mean, if you read Bulleh Shah poetry, which is here in Shahmukhi, um, I don't find Bulleh Shah an Arab. I think he died in 1757. The mullahs of at that time did, refused to bury his body. They declared him infidel, and he said in Punjabi, "Tanu kafir kafir akhde, tu ahu ahu ak." So he took the pride, because the kafir word in my early childhood and even today sound me very derogatory, very hateful. I usually call my, Pakistani fellows, I say, actually, you guys are kafir. Why? That kafir is a term belong to denier. You guys deny about your ancestors. And then the Bulleh Shah's poetry, then the fiction and the poetry written by quote unquote Muslim name writers like Sadat Hasan Manto, like the Ahmad Nadeem Kasmi, like Ghulam Abbas, all those writers, they actually gave strengthening to my ideas that we are sons and daughters of this Hindu civilization. So maybe we'll be sort of stuck in question later that what is Islam to me, what is faith to me, what is Muslimness to me. But in fact, Hindu civilization, Hindu Dharma is part and parcel of me.
So, Tahir, I think that explains your quest for who you are as a person. But let me take you in a slightly, just extension of that whole conversation. Recently, you shared the first two chapters of your video book called Ek Hindustani Pakistan Mein. It's your video autobiography, and also explains, of course, the ambience around you as you were growing up. But in the first chapter, you talk about growing up in Lahore and then Kasur, which you just mentioned, and you drew connections with Sri Ram's life. I'd like you to explain that a little bit. But you also talk about a lot of places with Hindu names in Lahore. Not ever having been to Pakistan, I had no clue of the kind of, ambience that existed in Lahore back then. I don't know what it looks like now, but I bet a lot of our audience, a lot of our viewers don't have a clue either. So I just like you to kind of dwell on that a little bit and, give a sense of that to our viewers.
Right. Yeah. Actually, Lahore, as I mentioned, and as it is evidence through history, is a city created by Lord Ram's son, Love,
Hmm.
and Kasur by his other son, Kash. So I was born in Lahore, actually in Gangaram Hospital. My mother came from Kasur because Kasur and Lahore are sort of a twin cities.
Hmm.
So she took the train from Kasur because she realized that she had to born a child and there was no good hospital there. So my mother's two brothers, they were living in Lahore. My mamas. So she came to Lahore, and I was born in Gangaram Hospital, and I grew up in Kasur. Then, because my parental and my maternal, both relatives are mainly in Lahore, so we were kind of a back and forth Lahore Kasur, and then when I was in class 10, we migrated to Lahore. Because it was about, I think, 45-kilometer distance. So Lahore, the first place I lived in Lahore was Krishnanagar. And the first thing I noticed when I started, living there with my parents, that all architect was a Hindu architect, because Muslim have their sort of a peculiar sort of a mihrabs and all those things. So that was pure. And then I learned from my new friends in that neighborhood, from my relatives, my uncles, my aunts, they were living. And then they said, yes, of course. I mean, before partition, there were hardly 2 or 3 Muslim houses in the whole big area. It's called Krishnanagar. And the next to Krishnanagar was a Santanagar. And my father started a business close to Anarkali, and there was a Jain Mandir. The area is called Jain Mandir, and King Edward Medical College was next to that. So Jain Mandir. So I used to go to my father's shop in Jain Mandir. So the whole environment was a pure Hindu environment, beautiful environment. Then I started writing, and there was an India Tea House. Later, they renamed it Park Tea House. And India Tea House was a hub for the writers, poets, journalists, thinkers. It was about, I would say, 300 meters from Jan Mandir. Then I started studying medicine. And, I got my house job in Gulab Devi Hospital. These names are still there, except the Krishnagar renamed Islampura. But still people call it a Krishnagar. Then I met a writer in India Tea House. Later it became Park Tea House. Ahmed Bashir, a very veteran, great writer of Pakistan. He was a father of Pakistan's well-known actress and great comedian Bushra Ansari. So Ahmed Bashir actually wrote a book, and I read his book. I discussed that book with him. He mentioned that in interior Lahore, there were only 5 or 6 Muslim houses. And that book is also available in Pakistan's bookstores. So in the entire walled city, Lahore, inside what we call our Western standards, downtown, where millions of people live, there were only 5, 6 Muslim houses. That's what the writer Ahmed Bashir, Mumtaz Mufti, all those great writers have written in their books. So that was the, architect of Lahore. That was the, social fabric of Lahore.
Interesting.
Then I spent most of my evenings, in tea houses, in chai khanas, the area called Lakshmi Chowk. And now where I live in Burlington, about 12 minutes drive from my house, there's a Lakshmi restaurant. And they make the best Lahori food. Lahori chane. And when I go there, I feel so closeness with the guys. They're run by Pakistani fellows. And I asked them, how did you bring the same flavor? They said, we were living in Lakshmi Chowk area as well.
So it brings back the childhood memories for you.
So Lakshmi Chowk hasn't gone in, anywhere. It is in my neighborhood in Canada. Now, unfortunately, if most Pakistani think, or Bangladeshi or Indian Muslims think that they are the offshoots of Central Asians, Mongols, Mughals, or Arabs, that clearly means they are lying to themselves. They are lying about their mothers, about their grandparents.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, Tahir bhai. The ambience and the social fabric you describe of your childhood years, is very different from what the world probably looks like there today. By the time you were born, India and Pakistan had already fought the Kashmir, war of 47, 48. And then, you were still a, toddler when the 1965 war took place. And then a few years later, 1971 and all that. So all that clearly must have poisoned the atmosphere in Pakistan as you were growing up. So, I just want to understand a little bit about the social and socio-political influences that that you had growing up in this atmosphere, plus your own family's atmosphere, and then your professional trajectory a little bit, so that we can understand how you navigated this journey from that kind of childhood into where you are today.
Right. First, before responding to your question precisely, I would like to show our views. One of my book here is called Al-Pakistan. You can see Imran Khan and Mr. Former Army Chief of Pakistan, Bajwa, wearing Arabic dress. So the book you mentioned, the video I shared with you, actually I'm writing an autobiography sort of. That autobiography, in fact, would reflect about my views, not about my whole life. So Pakistan mein ek Hindustani. So I would address one or more, lines in that regard too. In fact, every Pakistani is a Hindustani, as every German is a European, as every French is a European. Germans and French have their own sovereign states. There's nothing wrong in that. But no German, no French would deny they are Europeans either. So we all, from what we call Bharat Dharti, Sindhu Desh, Bangladesh today, Pakistan, even Afghanistan, we all are Hindustani. There's nothing wrong in stating that one could be Afghani, one could be Bangladeshi. I don't challenge their sovereignty. Now, those countries exist anyway, after the blunder of partition and all those things. But they are as Hindustanis as any German or French declares herself or himself. Now, coming back to your question precisely, Islam, in my perception, is a faith, is a good faith, like many other faiths. There may be few issues in Islam. I have read from Old Testament to New Testament and Quran Sharif. Christians and Jews, they have reformed themselves. When it comes to Islam, Islam is purely religion, belongs to Arab civilization. There is no Islamic civilization. Because Somali Muslim or UAE Muslim or Bosnian Muslim or a Hindustani Muslim like myself, we can sit together, but we have nothing to share with each other in terms of our culture, in terms of our language, in terms of our things. So this is not civilization. If Islam would have been a civilization, then the Somali, then the Pakistani Muslim, Bosnian Muslim, European convert Muslim, they all could share their civilization. They have just few faith sentiments, sort of namaz, sort of greetings. Even my name is Tahir, is not Islamic name, is an Arabic name. There are Arabs in Arabian Peninsula who are Christians and their names are Tahir too. Their names are Tariq too. Salam, the word salam, when we say salam, assalamu alaikum, salam itself is an Arabic word. My next door neighbor is a Christian Palestinian. When he meets me, he says, "Salam, brother." So once I just teased him, because he is very much critical of Islamic issues. So once I teased him, I said, "Brother, whenever you meet me, you greet me with the word salam, and you don't like Islam." He said, "Listen, salam is not an Islamic word. Salam is Arabic word." So today, as I mentioned earlier, that later I'll discuss about this Islamic civilization thing. So I visit GCC countries on and off, Qatar, UAE, and all Bahrain. So I feel Islam over there is quite different. What the South Asian Muslims practice Islam in South Asia. Arab Muslims have wonderful relations with India and Hinduism. Even Prophet Muhammad said in one of his statements that I get coldness from cold waves, actually, he said, cold waves from India. In what we used to say in Hindi, that mujhe Hind se thandi hawa aati hai. So Prophet Muhammad himself was very friendly towards India. And Muhammad bin Salman today greets and hugs Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But unfortunately, Muslims from South Asia, including Muslims from India, whom are not recognized true Muslims by Arabs, interestingly.
Correct.
You know, they have animosity to their own motherland because of their ignorance and arrogance. I would urge them, request them to revisit their thoughts.
Sure. So if you could just trace a little bit of your personal life, particularly professional life, and how you sort of grew away from Pakistan, and you obviously migrated to various countries and ultimately in Canada now. So if you could just take a little bit about talk a little bit about that, that would be very useful for our viewers.
Thank you. First, when I was living in Pakistan, I had the similar views. So I published a couple of books. I started my publishing company. I published a couple of books which were never liked by Pakistani clergy. And due to that environment, I had to move to Central Asia. So I was working as a freelance with Central Asian news agencies and other media outlets. So as I moved to from 1989 until 1998, I lived on and off in different parts of Central Asia and in Russia as well. So because in my early childhood, my adherence towards my dharma, and the other sort of a fantasy was the communism, because at that time it was a left, school of thought. So I went to Russia in 1989 when it was the Soviet Union. Although those were the years we could see written on the wall that the Soviet Union going to be collapsed soon. So when I, understood while visiting, traveling, living partially in Russia and Central Asia from 89 until 91, I realized that the communism itself has become a very stale ideology. Whatever Marx wrote, it was a philosophical thing, but the politicians and the rulers in different parts of Russia, they made kind of that communism irrelevant to the people of those lands. So then I'm kind of the witness of breakdown of Russia. In 1991, I was in Kazakhstan city Almaty when I saw Gorbachev on television, Russian state television, saying in Russian two words, "Federation Consulis," means federation finished today.
Okay.
Just two words, he said. Federation Consulis in Russian. So that means Russian Federation finished. So that I'm a witness of that dissolution of Soviet Union. While at the staying in a hotel in Soviet land at the time, Kazakhstan was part of Soviet Union at the time, and I remember Kazakh president begged on television. His name was Nazarbayev. He said that we don't want separation from our elder brother Russia. So my profession then, in Central Asia was a freelance writer. Then I opened a restaurant there because there was not much money in it, in journalism on those days. And even today, it's not easy to, meet all ends through writing work. So my love continued to Dharma while working, living in Central Asia, because there was so much love from Russians, even Central Asian Muslims, towards India, towards Hindu civilization. And I thought that the hatred I observed towards Hindus in Pakistan does not exist here. So that was kind of a very encouraging environment for me, very encouraging environment. So I was like back and forth from 89 till 98 to Pakistan, and a few months in Pakistan, back few months in Central Asia or Russia or Ukraine even, on those years. And then 1998, I decided to move to Canada.
Okay.
So here in Canada, I started my journalism again. So I started publishing weekly newspaper, and because I had so much hatred towards Hindus, Sikhs, and Jews precisely. So I decided to not publish any hatred thing in my newspaper against anybody, and precisely against Hindus, Sikhs, and Jews. And because it was an Urdu newspaper. Ethnic newspaper, there are so many ethnic newspaper in the US, here in Canada. So I started that ethnic newspaper. That was a, internet beginning era, sort of, in 1998. So still people were more interested to pick the newspapers, to read the hard copy and all that kind. That was the time. So, I mean, when I, published articles, sort of respect to my dharma and all those in Urdu language, readers here in Canada, Muslim, of course, they were mostly Muslim readers. And this is also my another complaint to my Indian brothers and fellows, that Urdu is not a Muslim language. It's an Indian language. For God's sake, we have to take the ownership of it. Simultaneously, we have to take the ownership of Punjabi as well. So anyhow, this is a separate debate. So now the readers by default were Pakistani Muslims, some were Indian Muslims, who could read the Urdu, and they could see my articles showing my reverence towards Hindu civilization, showing my reverence towards Israel. They were shocked. This was quite unusual, stuff for them. Then the mosques in Toronto started issuing fatwas against me. This is not a story of Pakistan.
No.
And in 1999, 2000, before 9/11, Canadian government was not like what we see today. They had nerves at the time.
Sure.
And at that time, there was a liberal government, interestingly. They stood by me. Canadian media was not like what we see Canadian media today. Canadian media, all liberal media, stood by me. Global Mail and Toronto Star, they published articles about my, peaceful agenda. Canadian government assured me that they would stand by my views. At that time, Governor General of Canada, I was a refugee here. When I came to Canada, I had $5 in my pocket. Canadian Governor General called me in her office. I still have that picture.
Oh, okay.
and assured me about my freedom of expression. And I was very grateful to Canada. I salute Canada about those, clear thoughts. Unfortunately, today's political environment is different. but still Canada and America are great societies. We love those societies. So that's how this transformation of my profession in terms of adherence towards my dharma continued. Continued. I had to shut down my newspaper eventually after 9/11 because there was so much pressure from the community. Then I had to move to some restaurant. I had to start some restaurant jobs and all those kind of things. you know.
Oh, I didn't know that part of your life. Interesting. Interesting. That's why when we eat together, the cooking is so good. Yeah, love for food shows through. Um, so that's actually that gives a pretty good full view of how you developed as a person and how your views developed into where you are today. Um, let me just take a little bit further. Of course, there are a lot of Muslims from Pakistan even who were born in so-called liberal or open thinking families, and they might even have positive feelings about dharmic principles. But you've taken it further, like some of your other friends. Tariq Fateh was another great friend of the Hindu society, and there are many more in that way. But it's few and far between, as you know. Majority of them, even if they hold good feelings about some of these principles, are not vocal. But you have actually, you're an advocate. Even I would call you even activist for many of the issues that Hindu society comes across. So what takes you there? Just share a little bit of that, and then we'll go in a slightly different direction, maybe.
Right, right. Actually, uh, as we see some very liberal and open-minded people from Muslim community, as you mentioned, that most of them are not very vocal about those issues. I would say some of them are very confused as well. Look at Mr. Jinnah, for instance.
Mm.
He was born in a very sort of a quote unquote secular, open, environment. He grew up in that environment.
Yeah,
He never practiced Islamic faith,
correct.
but he created an Islamic state called Pakistan.
Mm, mm, mm.
Look at Mr. Imran Khan. He himself confesses that I'm a playboy. I mean, being a playboy is not an openness. I understand it's a kind of a different direction. But the thing is,
Yeah,
in his most life, he never practiced Islam. But now he's a champion of Islam.
yeah.
He's a champion of Riyasat-e-Madina.
Mm.
So I mean, like for instance, Mr. Javed Akhtar, a famous Indian Urdu poet. He
Yeah.
calls himself, sort of a very liberal, and he calls himself atheist.
Atheist, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but he only talks about Muslim issues in India when Kashmiri Hinducide genocide happened. I don't remember his statement. For instance. So, I mean, like Sabah Naqvi or Arfa Khan, I don't see their statements on Kashmiri Hindus' exodus.
I agree. I agree.
So that is a very not confusing state of mind for themselves. As it's a very confused state of mind as a spectator for myself as well. What kind of these open secular Muslims are? One creates an Islamic state in the name of so-called two-nation theory. Other only talks about Muslim issues. Either those are exaggerated Muslim issues or whatever. They would only talk about Hamas issues, but they would never talk about Hamas terrorism against Israel, for instance.
Sure.
So that sort of a secular openness is shocking to me. In fact, the fellows like Tariq Fatah ji, he became very clear later in his life. I remember when I Tariq ji back in '98 in Canada, before I knew him from Pakistan, Tariq ji was a little different.
Mm.
Tariq ji was on certain issues little confused too. Some of his clips of those years are available on internet. When 9/11 happened, for instance, Tariq said that now Israel and India are on the same page. But then Tariq changed and he realized, and I salute him for his evolution of thought. You know,
Sure.
you know. So that, and now why am I woke? Because of the clarity of thought, because of the common sense. The common sense, which is not very common, unfortunately. What is common sense? Common sense is that Mr. Javed Akhtar is protesting about some Muslim issue. When I don't see his statement on Hindu Kashmiri exodus, my common sense, struck me and posed me a question: why this guy is not talking about this human rights issue? So, based on that common sense,
Mm.
I continued my journey. I thought, no, because honestly, I don't see Hindus attacks on others at large. They only react, And actually, recently they have started reacting. Thanks God. Otherwise, they were not even reacting.
Correct. Correct.
So that was kind of my observation as a writer, that these fellows of my ancestries. By the way, my family's last name is not Gora; it's Chawla.
Okay, interesting. I did not know that.
My family's last name is a Chawla, and there were so many Chawlas
Okay.
in Pakistan.
Mhm.
My pupa was Nerula. Last name was Nerula.
Okay, those are very typical Punjabi names,
Of
and
course, Punjabi Hindu names. So we were businessmen on this end now, in after creation of Pakistan.
I think you put it very succinctly. It's evolution and clarification of thought that
Yeah.
that brings you to where you are, and I think that that's a wonderful answer. Unfortunately, a lot of people are still in a that uh, I call it in space of hypocrisy or in state of confusion. One question that it brings up is you are clearly different. Your views are different from majority of your Pakistani friends. I'm not sure how it sits with them and how you're received in the in your own community. And how you navigate that tension.
This is very interesting question. My own community. Again, it's the question first, your first question.
Okay, yeah.
But no, this is very important. I would like to add few lines in it.
Sure.
My community now is is my neighborhood where I live. You know,
Understood. Yeah.
I'm 60.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 60-year-old. I'm
Mm,
living in this city of Burlington in Canada for the past 20 years.
mm,
This is, of course, my community.
sure.
And before, I lived on and off in Central Asia. That was my community too.
Mm, mm,
And then even while living in Lahore, my community was the ruins of those temples
mm.
and the gurdwaras and the places where I lived, where I born, where I worked. That was my community. So my community from early my childhood until now is of a community of my own choice. You know, so this is a kind of a uh, while living here in North America, you and I experienced the terminology diaspora, for instance.
Mm.
Diaspora is a beautiful thing. Now, what is my diaspora? Community and diaspora is a different. They have different connotations.
Oh, sure.
Community, in my perception, purely the area where I live. And the people I want to affiliate. It's all about my choice. And now the diaspora. Diaspora is, for me, is a kind of a link with civilization.
Mm, mm, mm.
I love Western civilization. I love Western openness. But this is my opted land. Canada is my dreamland is sort of a Bharat as well because of my civilization.
Sure.
So when Pakistani fellows, when they do not agree with my point of view, I tell them clearly, guys, we all live in Canada. This land is not just about diversity of faces. This land is about diversity of thoughts. Because when we talk about diversity, as you and I hear this, phrase all over North America. So I tell them, they say diversity is our strength. So diversity is our strength. It does not only mean that Pakistanis, Palestinians, Syrians, Hindus, Christians, they all are welcome to this land. Surely they all are welcome to this land, but their thoughts are welcome to this land too. If you have certain diverse thought against me, against my thinking, so do I. You have to tolerate that ideology. That's what I tell my fellows. So guys, we live in a land of diversity, where we do have diversity of thought, diversity of faces, both. So this is my very straight answer to them. And I do have dozens and dozens friends from Pakistani community. They are my lovely friends. Some of them are sort of a faith observers. I don't mind. They're as long as they tolerate my ideas, because I tolerate their ideas. So they should tolerate my ideas too. Simple as that. It's not one-way traffic.
Sure.
So that's the problem I see in South Asia. There's a one-way traffic. Secularism, fake secularism happen to be in India, one-way traffic.
Yeah.
So that is my precise response and answer to those fellows, that I will stay. I will remain with same ideology as I am. I will respect your point of view. I will agree to disagree with you, but you have to respect me. If you cannot respect me, you go that way. I'm happy at my place.
Yeah. So accept you as you are, as a person, as a human being. Okay. Just very briefly want to touch on some of the issues you have taken up. So I have chosen to call you a Dharma warrior. I hope you are you
I
okay
love
with.
it. Thank you. Thank you for this title.
So can you just share with our viewers some of the issues that you have taken up and actually been an activist and advocate and activist for those issues? I know the anti-CAA issue is there, the caste issue, some of the others. Please just share with our viewers so they know what you've been doing in that space.
As a Dharma warrior, I am a defender of my Dharma first and foremost in Canada now. I'm the founder of Hindu Forum Canada. I called a couple of my friends in January 2020. I said that when I see Canadian media, Canadian politicians, Canadian so-called civil liberty groups defaming my Dharma, attacking my Dharma, misinterpreting my Dharma, I get hurt. So let's create Hindu Forum. And our job is to respond to all those ignorant and arrogant individuals and people. So it's not just activism, This is part and parcel of my life
Sure.
because this is what I have to do. So, as a Dharma warrior, our Hindu Forum Canada counters all those false narratives as much as we can
Sure.
in our given resources, in our given capacity. So, we are doing that. So, when we do that here in Canada, of course, our efforts are linked with international issues as well. I mean, if I see Al Jazeera attacking Hindus, if I see some other so-called left, I don't recognize them actually left media. They are so-called. So when I see those medias or their, political forces attacking Hindu dharmas at international stage, so as much as we can do in our capacity of Hindu Forum Canada's directors, we respond to them. But primarily we are more focused in Canadian issues because there is so much misinterpretation. The reason I became Dharma warrior, because I felt that my brothers and sisters, when I say my brothers and sisters, is Dharma people. So when I see them shying away from their issues, and for instance, recently in the wake of Shri Lord Ram's Mandir, there was so much bad perception and bad connotation, negativity in Canadian press, in Canadian civil liberty groups. I got a letter through WhatsApp from a concerned Hindu Canadian citizen. It was written here, Canadian Hindu, a concerned Canadian Hindu citizen. The gentleman who sent me that letter, who runs a big organization in Canada, Hindu Indian, he sent me, said, Tahir ji, please circulate this letter. I phoned him. I said, how can I circulate this letter without having a name on the bottom? We should stand with our names. I mean, if I write this anonymous appeal or letter to a member of parliament,
it means nothing.
it means nothing.
Yeah,
I told the gentleman, I said, you are my good friend. I know you are a very good hearted person. But why can't you write your name on the bottom or your organization name on the bottom? This is the largest organization here. If you can't, write my name. Write Hindu Forum Canada's name. So that kind of a sort of a shyness in my community, that sort of a, the paradigm, still prevailing paradigm,
yeah, it's
forced me to do more activism.
it's very unfortunate, Tahir bhai, but I know exactly what you're saying. But I can tell you, I speak to a lot of my friends, Hindu friends in Canada who are working for various, with various Hindu organizations. They all very much appreciate what you do. So, on behalf of the entire Hindu community, I really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for your contributions. I'm going to just have two quick questions. Well, I don't know how quick they're going to be, but let me just get to them. So the first is about Bharat itself. So when I look at Bharat, uh, I see that it's always been a welcoming home for numerous faiths. Those who are, faiths that are not indigenous to Bharat. Jews have been lived there for more than 2,000 years, as you know. Parsis came in the, I guess, 8th century after they were, shunned out of modern day Iran, and then Baha'is also from the same place, and even Polish people, during the Second World War, a contingent came and was actually looked after in Bharat. But here we have a Muslim community that came, in the beginning of 8th century insane, and then ultimately, slowly, and a lot of them are, as you pointed out, converted Hindus for whatever reasons. which we won't go into at this point. But many of them are still speaking the language of Ghazwa Hind. There are some really, really, what I call Sanatani Muslims, if you like, those who have, who appreciate, where they are and the kind of ambience it offers. But there are many, and I would say majority even, who are still talking the language of Ghazwa Hind. What would you like to say to them?
Recently I heard comments from Imam Umar Ilyasi.
Mm,
He's chief imam of Indian Imam Association.
sure.
He went to Shri Lord Ram's ceremony,
Yes.
and he received a fatwa against him from some of the
Yes.
Indian Muslims. So, but there is a big hope when Imam Ilyasi, stated that way that this is Sanatani Desh, and we are part of it. I also noticed that some of the young generation, I would say some percentage, maybe in single digit yet,
Mm,
is kind of associate themselves as Bhartis. The
mm,
issue is so-called secular liberal Muslims. They talk about Islamophobia. If you go to a simple mosque in a village, they even don't know, the imam doesn't know the terminology of Islamophobia.
sure.
You know, so that kind of a Ghazwa Hind issue, I would try my best to be brief, could be challenged by India in a very positive way. But this government, now with the help of Sanatani Muslims, they are few hundred thousands roughly, I can see, honestly. I
Mm,
mean, like in 200 million people,
sure. Sure.
there must be few 100,000 people who feel like you and me. Those people should be empowered to spread the message of peace through their sort of platforms. This is the responsibility of majority Indian society. It's not about just the responsibility of Muslim community. It's the responsibility of the whole society to kind of encourage that environment that gives the right message to the Muslims that you are part and parcel of the society. Because, as I mentioned, in day-to-day life, ordinary Muslims, they live like Bhartis. The challenge only we feel or we observe when it comes to, sort of ideological narratives. Otherwise, in day-to-day life, they are all Bhartis. So I would conclude this thing that Indian society as a whole and the resourceful groups and the big corporations and the government herself, they need to come on the board
Mm,
to provide
mm,
resources to create progressive Muslim institutes
mm, mm.
in contrary to madrasas.
Thank you, Tahir Bhai. I think we see, as you pointed out, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. It's a long, dark tunnel, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And we are not a political organization ourselves, but we do see what's happening in the world out there. And we're very encouraged to see that the modern current government is very much focused on development as opposed to dogmatic ideological issues in the main. And some of the positions they have taken are actually very progressive positions, and hopefully they will bear fruit in times to come. I see a lot of actually very articulate Muslim, people on social media, on news channels, and so on and so forth, being very, very open and honest about how they feel about this radicalism. So that's another thing that that gives me a lot of encouragement and hope. So that brings me to my last question, and it is a little bit sensitive. A lot of Muslims would probably, they go into a very defensive mode when questioned about some of the beliefs and some of the things that we see in the Muslim faith. I've one observation, maybe a layman's observation might be that Islam seems to be at war with the world. Now, your views are very, very, very different from that. And so I'm just wondering, how do you connect with your faith? How do you translate your, how do you see that aspect of Islam from through your eyes?
So there are two parts of this question. One is a very, sort of a true perception, unfortunately, that Islam is at war with the world because of what is happening precisely after 9/11 and onwards. But the hope is from GCC countries, and especially from Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is the Kaaba and Qibla of Islam. So Saudi Arabia has changed a lot and is changing a lot.
Mhm.
And they are on the path of modernization. Not just Saudi Arabia, the countries like UAE. I was in UAE 2 months back, and I picked a couple of books written by Saudi officials, government officials. And in those books, there were like 20 times on each page, a hate, resentment towards Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas in their official books. And you cannot see this in America and Canada. So they are fighting back now to what was created by them back in 20 or 30 years ago. So the narrative would change about Islam when the main Muslim nations would change. So the South Asian Muslims, they don't understand Islamic spirit, in fact, because Islam belongs to Arab civilization. So South Asian Muslims, out of their ignorance, their arrogance, they talk about, stupid things. As you mentioned, you have read Quran. I have read Quran, like other what we call ilhami books, revealed books, what we call Torah, Bible, Quran. You would see a sequence in all those books. Those are historic books, and it is not necessary to have implementation of all and everything there. Though those were just said, verses were just said in context of their times. For instance, in Quran, when it says that kill all infidels, there are verses. Those were said in context of 1400 back wars. They are not like, at that time there were no sovereign states. Now there is no concept of jihad. So even in Islam, I have spoken to Arab scholars. Islam is their religion. Quran is in their language. They interpret Quran differently. They have authority to do what they call ijtihad. Ijtihad means rethinking of Islam. And they are doing it because this is their cup of tea. Yes, in that way, we see all those political issues and Hamas and all those things. Apparently, you and I would say that why Saudi Arabia is not denouncing Hamas, but they are not supporting Hamas either. They are not letting them to enter their country either. It's politics. It's a very complex issue. So they are containing them. Even Egypt is not letting them to enter into their territory. Even Jordan is not letting them to enter into their territory. They understand that how evil Hamas is. So that perception already little bit changed. And in our political worlds in America and Europe, no politician would ever say anything against Islam. If even you and I would utter anything, we would be labeled as Islamophobe. Once someone asked me about Islamophobia, I said that, Tahir, why did you say that Islamophobia is kind of a political terminology? So I said, okay, forget about Islamophobia. Phobia is a perceived fear. I have a real fear of some radicals. It's not a perceived fear.
Yeah, yeah.
So that perception exists, and it can only go away if these rich GCC countries would work on it, and they are working on it, and they are working on it. And now I forgot the second part of your question. I will be very brief.
I was just wondering, how you view the
Faith, my personal, yes,
your
yes,
faith, your relationship with, yeah, what you're doing. Yeah,
yeah, wonderful. So
yeah.
I was born in a Muslim faith family, which was of Hindu civilization. So my faith, what was my faith? Faith is one is a practice, rituals. One is my faith is in roti. You know, my faith is in my music, my language. That everything comes from my Hindu civilization. My roti is not like Arab roti. My roti is like a very Punjabi roti. I grew up with it and I'll die with it. You know, not that dahi balle, that chaat papdi. I mean, that is also a faith, in fact. People don't understand it. When I hear bhajans sung by Muhammad Rafi, I get tears in my eyes. That is part of my faith too. Now, precisely talking about Islamic faith,
Sure.
there is no such thing Islamic civilization. You know, so Islamic faith is like namaz, like roza, fasting. So my ancestors got fasting from Hindu civilization. So namaz is like matha tekana. I go to mandir, I go to gurdwara, I go to mosque. Everywhere I I go to my Lord. मैं मत्था हर जगह जाके टेकता हूँ. मैं जब चर्च जाता हूँ, when I go to church or even synagogue, I feel respect for church, synagogue. I go to their, spiritual. So my faith, my God is the whole universe. And now instead of borrowing Islamic, rituals from South Asian Muslims, I have started following Arab Muslims, who are the pillars of Islam. And they over there, when I go Saudi Arabia, I go there. They don't put Quran on the top shelf. Quran is on their table. They can interpret in whatever way they understand their language. They are honestly 1,000 times more open towards their faith than the Muslims of South Asia. So my faith is kind of from my cultural background to my living, style, to my lifestyle, to my spiritual feelings. I mean, there are moments when I get, ill. So I pray to Lord Ram. I pray to Allah. I pray to Lord Jesus. That's the way I am. So this is my perception of my faith.
Understood. So, I mean, I think the way I would interpret what you're saying is you're not a Muslim of the book, you're a Muslim of the spiritual journey.
Absolutely.
And, you connect with the divine by whatever name it's called. So, with that, Tahir bhai, it's been, you've been very generous with your time and with your thoughts, of course, very open and frank, expression of who you are, what you believe in, and how you are, carrying in the path of dharma. So I would like to thank you for, spending this time with us, and I look forward to more conversations, and particularly, I certainly look forward to the special tea that that you're enjoying. Next time I'm in your neighborhood, I'd certainly like to drop in and enjoy a cup of that tea with you.
Thank you very much. Most welcome. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you and very thoughtful. Uh,
Thank you so much. Namaste and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Jai Shri Ram.